But all this Iboku, wrapped and brought to everybody. Now that it has ended, what should we now do? Should we now continue along the way of depopulating Igbo land and killing young Igbo people? And then blocking any economic reconstruction in Igbo land. Should we go on doing that? I mean both.
Okay.
The economic blockade, the blocking of Eastern ports should be lifted from Burutu to Calabar, of which 3 of them are Igbo coastal ports.
Hello everyone, welcome back and thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you all are doing well by the grace of God. So my people, this is a very great conversation from these great men talking about the revelation made in IBB new book. So the question now is, after this revelation, what next for Ndi Igbo? You guys know that they have denied Ndi Igbo many things in Nigeria just because they tagged the 1966 coup to Igbos. So now that the truth has finally come out, what next? And also they gave insight of what brought about all this hatred to Ndi Igbo in Nigeria, especially from Britain. You guys know that after that 1966 coup, it was on BBC, they said that it is Igbo coup. So all this will be discussed in this particular video. I will urge you guys to watch this video to the end because it's worth watching. Don't forget to share and also subscribe if today is your first time here. Give this video a thumbs up so that YouTube will recommend it for other people to watch. Thank you so much for doing so.
I think history is a force of its own, and it's not just a more chronicle of things that have happened, but narratives of what happened as perceived by different observers. And when seen from different eyes, it is possible to synthesize a trend, a tendency that best approximates the truth. And in this case, from the facts he presented, General Babangida presented his perception of the truth. But the key thing is to look at the facts he presented, because truth has different way of being perceived by different cultures. In fact, among the Igbo, we talk of Igbo truth, which is what really happened. But many other cultures don't see truth that way. They see truth as interest, what benefits me. Because of it, we have to have an open mind to see how different people see this truth. But I want to observe that what General Babangida said is important because he was a key participant in the process. He was in the army in 1966, experienced the first coup, was part of the second coup, was part of the Civil War, and he recorded his experiences and listed dates and so on. So people have to look at those basic facts before expressing an opinion. But I want to also point out that what Babangida had said in his book is the subject of a whole book called Nzogu, written by General Obasanjo, President Obasanjo, in which he had explained what has happened. That, for instance, you see Babangida, his book, expression of Nzogu as a regular northern guy. And that when Nzogu died, he was given a military honor burial. That is very, 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 very important. Very, 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 very important. That could have told all this argument all along. If people take note that when Nzogu died in the northern front, Nsukka front, populated at that time by the 1st Division of the Nigerian Army, made up of core northerners, and they took his corpse and gave him an honorable military burial. They didn't bury him as an enemy. It is very, very, very important. People ignore that fact all along. But if they took note of that fact, that was giving military honor burial by those who would otherwise be seen as his enemy at that time, all this argument will not have risen. But in any case, I want us to know that the idea of the January 1966 coup being an Igbo coup was articulated by Britain and broadcast first by BBC. It is very important to take note of it. It is further important to take note that Britain had planned a war to take place by or before 1958 against the eastern region of Nigeria. And that the governor in the east at that time, Robert Stillborden, pressed to stop that. What they did, note, by 1966, from 58, that's 8 years, very few years. What they did was they took the event of January 1966 as pretext to activate a war they had planned against the Igbo and against Eastern Nigeria. In fact, when I say against Eastern Nigeria, that against the Igbo and the Bibio, who from the slave era, they had marked out as unmanageably rebellious. Why would they plan that war? They planned the war because by 1929, the women in the East had uprisen and disrupted their whole program of indirect rule using artificial foreign chiefs. From 29 to 49, when the Eva Valley massacre over coal at Enugu, which Britain was cutting away to use to rehabilitate Britain after the World War II, was my 20 years. Again, it was the Igbo that had risen at Enugu and they massacred the coal miners, and it led to all kinds of confusion. And then they plotted to end it. But we still need to go further behind and find the role of Igbo slaves in the American Civil War, in which Britain and France supported the losing party of Confederates. After which they set up the Hausa Constabulary, which became the Nigerian Security Services as we know them, and specifically excluded the recruitment of Southerners in order to avoid recruiting rebellious people. Even before then, we have to go back to Haiti, the Haitian Revolution, which is the greatest revolution in all of human history, in which a slave population defeated all the world powers at that time, Spain, British Empire, Napoleonic France, and proclaimed their independence. And this phenomenon was led by the Igbo. The slaves had analyzed all the 27 ethnic nations. Those from Nigeria, the Nago were there. Yoruba is a new name. The Yoruba, the Nago, that were there. The Fula were there. The Hausa were there. But identified the Igbo as the model to follow and win freedom, and they did. And Napoleon marked out that the regions had to be wiped from the earth to stop the black race from marching on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
But the Igbo led the black race to defeat Napoleon and abort that ambition of the European imperialists and slavers. So we need to go back and understand this thing and come forward to Nigeria. Why did Lugard, after analyzing Nigerian ethnic groups, particularly the Hausa, Fulani, the Igbo, Yoruba, point out that these other people were neither here nor there, but that Igbo should be watched because they wouldn't be in support of their plunder or the black race. Okay. So this is, I want us to keep this in perspective before we make it a Nigerian debate, an Igbo debate, Yoruba debate, Hausa debate. No. Okay. The war was planned by the British. The idea of IGBO COUP was articulated by the British, and every other thing is interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Very clear in context that the war of that happened in Nigeria, obviously the coup itself, the January 1966 coup, it's what one may not entirely place its hand as to the involvement of the Britain at that point. Obviously, the fallout is what is very clear. And, one thing that you said that is very, very intriguing is many people tend to forget that Nzogu was actually buried with a full military parade. So in other words, he was buried a nationalist, so to say. So, and if one begins to put that into context, one now then, asks this question. Professor Obasigwe, I'm coming to you with this now. If you can unmute, please. If one puts that into context, one will now begin to wonder if Nzogu was buried, with full military honor, almost like a national hero. I mean, I would say that, that's what it means, because the military guys are nationalists. If Nzogu had done that, if the Nigerian state had done that to Nzogu, Obasigwe, my question then is, at what point do you think the whole thing basically changed? Because, for instance, there was a song, Ewu Nebakwa, that suddenly surfaced recently. People say, oh, this song was used by the Igbos to mock the Northerners. But on a closer look, I made a tweet. Actually, that song was released in 1964, before the coup. That song was sung, was a song by someone who was not Igbo, by from Kalabali. So if you just oppose all this, the question that is bugging the minds of everyone is, why do you think that this narrative was pushed in order that things eventually the center couldn't hold? Professor Obasigwe, are you there?
Are you hearing me, sir?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll be speaking while managing my electricity. First of all, I'll go direct to the point. And I thank my TV and Mazezoke for all your efforts. I also thank you for the elucidations. The point I'm going directly to is the 10 trillion naira request by whoever, so that we don't forget the main object of this Friday retreat or so. Nobody authorized anyone to seek 10 trillion naira as restitution or compensation for the Igbo. And nobody is authorized to make such demand on other than what the Igbo had said in the 2014 National Conference, in the 1990s Abacha Conference, in the Oputa panel. The Igbo, the present Nigeria, is developed by the Igbo nation. The resources that developed the Nigerian nation, the trillions and Tugri, built Sokoto, built Lagos, built everywhere. The trillions came from Igbo land, and those adjacent to Igbo land from the east entirely. And these trillions were taken out by force without any effort to also build any part of Igbo land. And how can an Igbo person go and demand 10 trillion naira for the sake of restitution when we are now hearing that 16 to 20 trillion naira is just being invested in building a road? And an Igbo person goes to demand 10 trillion naira. So that is an insult to the sensibility of the Igbo nation. Nobody should make such a demand. Number two, Babangida's book ought to answer the title, A Journey in Disservice. Disservice. Because there is nothing he wrote there that has not been known already. There is not, and it was a great disappointment. The people who joined him in that hall to witness the launching of a book that never said anything new, to witness the launching of a book by a man that destroyed the Naira, that destroyed many lives, that was held, the first properly held election that was annulled by him, that extricated himself, so he thought, from responsibility for all these terrible actions, and that laid the foundations for the tragedy that is Nigeria today. And everybody was there, hailing him and donating money. In addition to all the loot that he acquired and went away, oil windfalls and so on. So this was an affront on the people of Nigeria. The Maradona has been played again to the people of Nigeria. Then let me cut it there and come to the January 15 coup d'etat. Because the Igbo nation, the Nigerian nation, the whole world need to know this. In fact, people have already known it. If that coup was not an Igbo coup, what was Babangida waiting for? Why didn't he say so when he was head of state and government? If that was not an Igbo coup, so why all these military governments have not said so before? They knew it was not an Igbo coup. It could not have been an Igbo coup d'etat when the Igbo were killed inside it, when it was the Igbo that aborted it, when most Igbo people never even knew about it. The people that are insisting that it was an Igbo coup have not told us which Igbo met to design and sanction a coup d'etat. They have not told us that. That coup d'etat, a coup d'etat was already foreseen in the 1960s. Even Ojukwu suggested a coup d'etat to Gowon and Banjo, that they should take over the government. When, after Balewa made a treaty with Britain for an Anglo-Nigerian treaty, that was antithetical to Nigerian independence. When Awolowo was jailed, and people were not liking it, the whole nation was in tumult. Killings in Western Nigeria, mini genocide in the Middle Belt, Nigeria was in disarray. Rumors of coup d'etat had already been in the University of Ibadan. People knew that something like a coup d'etat was going to take place, but nobody knew exactly who was going to be behind it. Namdi knew, Alewa knew, Akintula knew, Apara knew, Amadu Bello knew. The students at University of Ibadan knew. The radical intelligence in Nigeria knew that there was going to be a coup d'etat, but nobody knew who exactly was going to take over the government. Hiroshi knew. There's no doubt that people knew, but the actual coup that took place, they didn't know. Because Amadu Bello himself and Akintola were trying to enact a coup d'etat on January 17th to wallop the West and the East and Nigeria. And Njoku, who was in the intelligence service, monitoring the trial of Obafemi Awolowo, didn't like the way he was being treated And then these coupists wanted to take Awolowo and become the Prime Minister of Nigeria. Question now. Nigerians have not answered. Is it possible for Chief Obafemi Awolowo to be programmed to be the President of Nigeria, Prime Minister, while he was in the University of Calabar without his knowledge or consent? Is it possible that Awolowo didn't know about that coup? It was that coup d'etat, a continuation or not a continuation of Awolowo's attempt to overthrow the government of Balewa in favor of a revolutionary government in Nigeria. I'm not saying it is so or it is not so, but the question is it possible for Chief Obafemi Awolowo not to know about the coup d'etat that was going to make him the Prime Minister, given the fact that Professor Aluko in the Department of Economics, University of Nigeria, Suka, then Dr. Aluko, was always visiting Chief Obafemi Awolowo. And then from Calabar, he will go to Ibadan. From Ibadan, he returns to Suka. And from Suka, goes back to Awolowo. Awolowo was totally abreast of what was going to happen or what was happening in Nigeria. At least he was not kept in the dark. And Okpara was always paying him through him, treating him as a dignified Nigerian that he deserved. So the question now is it possible that Chief Awo didn't have any knowledge of that coup? I'm not saying that he did or that he didn't, but I'm a social scientist and we deal with probabilities plus minus a certain margin of error. Then secondly, they say it's an Igbo coup because Ironsi did not punish Nzogu and the coupists. That is also a falsification of history. First of all, Ironsi breached the agreement with Nzogu. When Nzogu arrived from Kaduna to Lagos, he went and jailed him, pursued him with machine guns. That wasn't the agreement he reached with Nzogu. If Ironsi was part of that coup d'etat, why did he imprison Nzogu? Why didn't any of the coupists expose Ironsi's duplicity? And how could Ironsi have punished the coup when a committee has been set up to be the chairman of that committee to investigate about that coup d'etat, the people involved and the circumstances, after which, if the Supreme Military Council goes and approves the recommendations, a military tribunal or court martial will be set up. How could Ironsi have punished the coupists when Gowon had not submitted the report of the Supreme Military Council that said until now Gowon has not submitted that report? Ironsi had not even executed Atakaboro, who was found guilty of treason. Therefore, those who are blaming Ironsi for not punishing the coupists simply know that they are not telling the truth, because there is no way Ironsi could have punished the coupists at that point in time when the ones report had not come out. When the Supreme Military Council had not gone through the report, even of that of Atakaboro. So then that is on. So, the question of whether it is an Igbo coup, no, the Igbo had no hand in it. In fact, at the moment of that coup, why were there certain transfers in the army? Certain people in the army were reposted to several places. Were they done by the Igbo? So what I'm trying to say is that what Babangida said made no meaning. Those people who are saying that he read a wonderful book, it's not true. Because there is nothing there that has not been known before, that the Igbo played no part except the military among them that played a part, not as Igbo, but as Nigerian people. People also have not come to the fact of the achievements of that revolution. Nobody likes killing.
Hello?
Nobody likes bloodshed. I'm coming, sir. I'm coming, sir. Nobody is approving of killing.
Yes, I can hear him. Go ahead.
Excuse, nobody is approving of killing. Hello, sir.
Go ahead. Just round up. I can hear you. Go ahead.
I'm rounding up. Nobody is approving of killing. Nobody is approving of bloodshed. The killing of Ahmadu Bello and his wife and so on. Well, nobody should approve of that. Neither anybody should approve of the killings in the West or in the Middle Belt. The question is now that when Babangida has said it's not an Igbo coup, and some people are saying that he said it was an Igbo coup, it was only a matter of interpretation. Yes, Nigeria is in a stage of reinterpreting histories, empirical situations. Now that Babangida has said it's not an Igbo coup, which means the military had known, rulers of Nigeria had known it was not an Igbo coup. Igbo never conspired. And now, what are they to do now? They impose economic blockade against the Igbo, close the Igbo ports of Port Harcourt, Bonny and Opobo and eastern ports. Will they now lift the economic blockade now that they know it wasn't an Igbo coup?
Okay.
Will they now begin a process of compensating the Igbo, of apology, of erecting a memorial to say, Igbo, we are sorry.
Okay.
All these killings that are happening in Igbo land, Igbo youths are being arrested unfairly. Thousands of millions of Igbo people are in Asian jails. Is there a government in Nigeria that can now recall them? Can they now release Martin Nambikano and say, okay, this thing you were saying, we've understood it. You've given feeling to the necessity for restructuring Nigeria for the benefit of everyone. Igbo are ready to begin the process of rebuilding Nigeria. Now they know the Igbo people are not culpable. Will this collective punishment come to an end? So all this grammar we are speaking, somebody said that it wasn't that it was Babangida said it's not an Igbo, it's an Igbo, and so on. But the main point is Babangida specifically said it was not an, it wasn't an Igbo coup. So what is to be done now that we are at this stage?
Hold on.
And I'm advising all Igbo people, they should stop this 10 trillion naira demand and all 10 trillion naira demand. What Igbo now need is lifting the economic blockade of the East, re-triggering an eastern pole of development, re-triggering it, and a regional form of government that gives the Igbo self-determination within one Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
So that the Igbo can develop on their own, Yoruba on their own, Hausa and so on their own, within the same Nigeria. So now that we now know it's not an Igbo coup.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Welcome to Chammercy News TV.